Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, Challenged by Fragmented IT Tools, Teams, and ITM Processes. Who you gonna call? We're really excited to have you on the webinar today. Next slide, Britton. We have two speakers today, me included, that are really excited to speak to you about this topic. I'm Adam Blau. I'm the VP of Product Marketing here. I spent a lot of time working with customers, analysts, and other types of communities to understand customer challenges and objectives, and understand where the market's going. So I'll be really happy to kind of share our perspective of why companies are fragmented, how tools are separated between teams, and what is the kind of problem that customers have. And Britton, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks. My name is Britton Starr. I am a technical account manager here at BigPanda. I've been in IT operations for about 20 years now, and I work with our various customers to sort of drive at value and adoption and sort of make sure that people are getting everything they can out of the tool.
Right. Thanks, Britton. So we chose the theme Ghostbusters because it's sometimes you might feel like you need someone to come to the rescue, or there's things happening that are really problematic or don't know how to go about it. But we're going to try to provide some practical solutions and practical ideas how to get rid of Slimer within your IT. So next slide, please, Britton. It's a click through. So if you could just do the 2 clicks, that'd be great. So I wanted to share a little bit what's going on. So a lot of the companies we speak with are large enterprises, and they have teams across different areas of the enterprise, and they have different roles and people looking to try to detect and understand what's happening within an application or service and go about a incident management process. And we commissioned a survey from EMA Research last year to really understand the challenges around fragmentation. And what was really surprising to us when we got the survey results back was that detection wasn't the biggest challenge our customers were facing. Like, they have plenty of telemetry, or they're getting detection through the service desk, and they're hearing about stuff. It's a very reactive nature. But the real challenge that they had in terms of trying to reduce MTTR was actually getting information from other people and getting them to collaborate. So it could be things like a bridge call setup. It could be identifying the right domain experts to join that call, getting the information that they need. That was the biggest challenge, which was a kind of a surprise to us. And then we decided to dig in a little deeper. Well, how much of a challenge was that? And what came back to us was kind of shocking a little bit. Maybe it is for you listening to this webinar, that for more than half of the response, the greatest source of time was just waiting for information. 50% said it was 25% or more was the greatest percentage of waiting for information. And I was like, wow, what is that all about? So I thought I'd kind of give you a visual representation of what the challenges our customers are facing. And if we go to the next slide, I kind of want to share what that looks like. So this is a visual representation of how enterprise customers that we speak with typically look like. And of course, every organization is different, and this doesn't capture everything. But many large companies have like a NOC center or an operations center, and that's staffed with people who are responsible for looking at all the events and alerts that are coming in from different tools. So some applications, some service owner teams send their data there, but not all do, just some. And so those operations centers are looking at all the data that's being sent to them. Some service and application teams will have self-contained units working within like a SRE model, or working directly within a DevOps model. We're trying to be much more agile, and when an incident is identified, they work on it instantaneously and don't want to work within an ITSM team. But no self-contained team is fully independent, and they do have shared dependencies, and they do go to the service desk when something's wrong. Because how do you get to IT? You go through the service desk. And then that's where, people are looking to like triage, like, what is this? Who owns it? Can I look at, like, is the knock looking at topology or change data? The service desk is looking at SOPs and run books to try to make sense of that data. So we go to the next slide. This is where I believe that, one back, please, Britton. Yeah, thank you. I think this is where I see the challenge that our customers are facing, that waiting for information. So, the knock is looking at different types of data sources to try to triage, like, what's the priority of this? How do I categorize it? Who should I assign it to? But they may not have access to all different systems and teams and have access to that documentation. The service desk may or may not be able to identify runbooks or SOPs in order to how to assign an incident to the right team. And the service desk will often just go to the knock to try to find out what information is there. And all that information is missing because it's not centralized in one system or point of view. And so when information is missing or you're waiting for other teams to give you the information you need, it's sometimes just easier to escalate it to the L2. And then the L2 has to then start diving in. And the database team will ask the network team, hey, is it you? Is it you? And that's kind of that round robin, or there might be kind of that, questions that people are asking, hey, I need some information because I'm fine, but it could be the network person or it could be the cloud. We don't know. And in the meantime, then customers are calling in. And customers are saying, hey, my app is down. It's slow. I need information. And then things start to get hairy. On the next slide, please, Britton. This is where challenges really start to happen. So executives are starting to call in. SLA breaches are happening, and you have those bridge calls from hell. You have 40 people on the call, all listening in. No one can do any work because we're all trying to identify what this critical incident is or an outage has occurred. The service owners are going directly to the L2 because they want to bypass the knock. The service desk can't give real-time updates to different teams. And again, everybody's waiting for information. And to use a saying from Ghostbusters, from Peter Venkman, is like human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. This is what it's like when you're in it. No one knows what's going on, a lot of chaos and just missing information, and it's extremely painful. So what do we do? So that's what BigPanda does. This is what we solve for. I'm just on the next slide. It's really thinking about how to bring in all that type of knowledge that you have. And Britton will share some examples how to do this within the machine data, the observability, topology, change, and working within your ITSM teams. But it's also this concept of how do you bring in your operational knowledge, your institutional knowledge, like SOPs, runbooks, your informal knowledge, how people have worked that hasn't been documented. How can you use AI sensing data to make sense of that? So there's a new paradigm in this AI-powered world, how you can bring all these different types of data, either structured, semi-structured, unstructured, into a unified view that can surface the important insights that every person involved in incident management can have so that they can work independently, they can work collaboratively if they need to, but all have it in the place of where they work so they can respond very quickly and not wait on that MTTR and other information. So there's ways of surfacing information for the NOC, ways of surfacing information for the service desk, those L2 engineers and L3 stakeholders, so that they can work and not wait and not have to ask other people in order to do it. So if they can be much more responsive, they can reduce MTTR, but really reduce that toil and that confusion and all that duplicative work that all these different teams are doing trying to solve one problem to really drive operational efficiency. And of course, which is most important for our customers, is really drive that amazing customer experience by having reliable and resilient applications and services. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Britton. And Britton will kind of share his perspective and how he helps customers as a technical account manager go through this process and looking at their data. Britton, I'll hand over to you. Oh, I forgot. How could we not have trivia?
Yeah,
because this
get
goes.
that.
Yeah. All right. In the original Ghostbusters movie, When you see the ghost in the library, what is this ghost doing? And what is the name of the ghost? I remember it very well. I am Gen X, so part of my defined experience. So this was Slimer, of course, and Slimer was reading books in that prestigious library, which leads us to the next question. Where was that in the library? So, where, at what college did this happen? Anybody ever been to New York? All right, that's where Riverside Drive, where Columbia University is. That's where it happened. Yeah, really beautiful library, kind of a iconic memory of the movie, where Slimer was reading books and the Ghostbusters go in and stuff like that. So now I'll hand it over to you, Britton.
Cool. Uh, hey, so like I mentioned earlier, I'm a account manager here at BigPanda. I wanted to kind of take some time today and share with you a story from my working past. This is a story about how I was able to use the capabilities of the BigPanda platform combined with understanding the needs of people and teams and the processes that they use to be able to transform part of our IT operations and improve the effectiveness of the work they performed. Um, and really the quality of life of the people that were doing the work as well. As Adam mentioned, BigPanda is a powerful, flexible platform that gives you an arsenal of new tools in your tool belt to improve the operational effectiveness of your organization. I want to take a moment and set the stage because truly understanding the challenges facing an organization is important to designing the best possible solution. When our story begins, we had just gotten a new CTO. Within the first couple of months of him starting, there were several major outages, big, unfortunate, just absolutely nasty ones. Our problem management team came up with a number, a very real and very scary number that got passed upwards to the CTO and his peers of just how much money every minute of one of those incident calls was costing us, and he was not thrilled. So after that, he had settled on the idea that we should have one single group that was responsible for watching all of our IT systems for the entire organization. I'll talk more about that in a second, but that's sort of where I came in. I basically helped train the staff and was a sole engineer that helped support them. The new team was intended to do a number of things, provide a unified operations group, increase system visibility, reduce the severity of outages, and the time that it took to detect them. We wanted to better coordinate incident response, to improve MTTR and reduce customer impact. They also wanted to free up our SMEs to do things like focus on business critical innovation. Um, Anyone who's been in operations or IT in general knows how hard and challenging that can actually be with today's fragmented tools and siloed teams. To have a team like a knock, you have to have people. I joined very early on in the department before it was even live, and I got to see firsthand the challenges of standing up a team like this and what it took to implement. We met with more than a dozen departments over the first month to basically try and understand their teams, who they were, what they did, what tools they had access to across the entire organization. Because every little group or team, server, network, database, all those ones that Adam had mentioned, they had their own stuff, their own tools, their own processes. But as I found out, they also had their own challenges. We're going to zoom in on one of them in a moment, but let's keep it high level for now. It was around this time that I became very acutely aware of how true the phrase is, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. We had some teams that were generally very receptive. One team was nearly desperate for help, right? They'd had a very public outage. It was very impactful. Got a lot of the right or perhaps wrong eyes on it, and they were happy to help us. But other groups, they were less interested, right? I bet even now, they're still probably tough customers. They might have given us read access to a tool or said, hey, here's a dashboard, but they weren't really invested, right, in involving us. They didn't want to change their process or what their tool was doing. All right, not ideal, but let's take a step back. There's a lot of obstacles that come up when you're trying to shift to a unified operations model. I want to take a second and talk about some of those issues or objections that you might see and what they mean, because if we understand them, then we understand the people and how to work with them. And honestly, sometimes we can occasionally work around them if we have to, if they really plant their feet. Um, so these are some of the objections that I've seen. It's not necessarily an exhaustive list, but there's some of the common ones that I've ran into over the last few years while I was trying to help companies down a path to operational maturity. Um, First off, you have teams that can be hesitant, resistant, or even fearful of change. Our process mostly works. Why would I change it? Some teams may be just fine with the status quo and they don't want to risk breaking what's mostly working. It could also be something as simple as self-sufficiency. We've got this, right? They've managed so far, and maybe they don't think they need your help. It could also be this sort of fear of you're just airing our dirty laundry. And this one I think is a big one sometimes. Uh, if they're the first or the only people to get notified about their issues, then they can try and fix them before anyone else is the wiser. And this is a pretty common thing in a lot of larger organizations. You know, they don't want necessarily everyone else to know. Um, but another one that can actually be kind of helpful is the sort of what does unified ops bring to the table? What are you really doing for me, right? Um, these teams may need convincing that you're actually adding value to their process. And then also, there's just tool shortcomings in general, right? You get what you pay for. Some tools are not super flexible, or they don't have a large variety of options in terms of what they configure or how they send data. Things are unclear, murky even, but oftentimes owners of the tools have staked their reputation and growth at a company to the success of that tool, and they will be more than willing to push back on perceived threats. I'm going to bet that a lot of these things sound familiar to you. And as we were standing up this organization, we'd attempted to address those things through a variety of means with varying amounts of success, if I'm honest. But if we fast forward 6 months to the beginning of our customer journey with BigPanda, and it's interesting because at BigPanda, you'll hear that phrase customer journey a lot, and it's really stuck with me. I didn't get it initially, but that partnership really is a journey, and that's why we're going to focus on it. There was this developing hunger in the organization for doing something different, right? At that time, like I said, we had some very impactful outages, a second round of those even, that were top of mind. They'd gone on longer than they needed to. You know, people were working off to separate sets of information. Um, you know, things were a mess, the chaos, right, that Adam was describing. And that's very often the case because you have these, you know, complex, disparate environments, different teams looking at different tools, sometimes speaking different languages. Um, so while we'd had a vision of unified IT operations, we were really struggling to get there. But like I said, that hunger was just growing and growing to do something better because people knew that things weren't working despite all the time and effort. Again, it's probably going to sound familiar to you, but enter BigPanda. One thing that I had noticed straight off was the ability to use BigPanda to drive change, to let BigPanda be the catalyst for change in our organization. That was really one of the main selling points for me was a platform that had the power and the flexibility to meet teams where they were and enable us to drive change and operational improvements across the entire organization with BigPanda's unified data fabric, connecting all these separate systems and applications. That was really one of the main selling points for me. And I fought very hard in favor of bringing the platform in with my management for that reason. Thankfully, in the end, they agreed and we sort of took the first steps on our BigPanda journey. Now, to be clear, BigPanda isn't a day one magic bullet. Nothing ever is. And if the sales guy is telling you that, they're probably not being honest, right? However, when you combine that powerful, well-designed platform with the processes and procedures to use it, you can begin to make a dramatic impact on your organization. I'm going to talk you through one specific example from my career that I think shows how effective that these sort of efforts can be. The scenario is fairly straightforward, but it's still a powerful example, and I hope that it can illustrate or even inspire a more effective BigPanda usage in your organization. So let's circle back to one of the teams I met with. In this case, it was the network team. They had their own way of doing things, but they also had their own challenges. I met with the manager, and he'd let me in on some of the shortcomings of their process. Go to the slide here. When he was talking, he mentioned that um, problems in the network often come down to two flavors for them. They can be small and intermittent and inherently tough to diagnose, or they can be absolutely catastrophic, high visibility, high impact, big business fallout kind of problems. And that dichotomy informed a lot of what they were doing. But the thing is, network monitoring is hard. The network's at the bottom of the stack. It's almost universally the first thing to get blamed. And often it's not the network at all. It could be an obscure change to an application, it could be an overloaded database server, it could be all manner of things that are less obvious. Um, when he was talking, though, he mentioned some of their procedural difficulty dealing with alerts. They had multiple tools, 4 or 5 at a time, to do different things, firewall alerts, SNMPs, typical NMS stuff, all that. And the on-call staff, and I know because I was on that rotation for some time, uh, during major issues could get absolutely inundated with a flood of low-quality alerts from these tools that lacked clarity and context. Most of us have probably woken up bleary-eyed to a set of indecipherable text messages in the middle of the night, and it's not fun. But they could also get this sort of slow trickle of low-value alerts that, while largely able to be just dismissed, would negatively impact the employee's quality of life, constantly popping up and bother them. So there was room for improvement. The central operations team and really, the knock of any major organization is always desperate for good information regarding the network because you either need to rule the network out or rule the network in as fast as possible. And in that quest that most companies have to do things like reduce MTTR, making sure that a ticket goes to the correct team the first time instead of, sending your network team on a wild goose chase is paramount to those efforts. So I leapt at the opportunity to improve our processes, but also, help both teams at the same time. And I think that's what a lot of this comes down to in this space is then listening and then building in a way that adds value. So I've started here sort of outlining some of each team's needs. You're going to have two sets of perspectives. You'll see the network team's challenges and needs, and then those of the NOC. All right. So the network team, they wanted to remove the physical dependence of an on-call phone, right? They wanted to improve the consistency and the actionability of the alerts between their NMS tools. They wanted to clarify device names to facilitate better understanding by their staff. They wanted to reduce their noise and inbox clutter, not getting potentially hundreds of emails a day. And they wanted to improve the visibility of their status to other teams, which is what I call mean time to innocence. Again, with the network, either rule it out and move on or rule it in and get to work. And the knock, they, on the other hand, they wanted better visibility into network alerts, right? They wanted more clarity regarding the scope and severity of those outages. They wanted clarity on the device names and what they were actually doing. They also had the desire to ingest and process all of that alert data into BigPanda for a unified view instead of having to look at multiple tools that the network team owned. And then they also critically needed visibility into the network team's response. Are they on it? Are they about to implement a change? Could this impact something else? Or has no one actually engaged yet and we need to work really hard to get someone, notified? So we have these two conflicting set of needs. The question is, how do we actually meet this diverse set, right? The clue actually is going to be on one of the slides, but it's actually related to device names. So BigPanda here comes to the rescue. What I did was we came up with a process, in this case, largely procedures, alert tool chain that leverages the strength of BigPanda and its AI to meet the needs while also minimizing the lift on the teams involved. The key really is in the device naming. So if we look at our, oops, if we look at our device names here in a second, we're going to say, what can we actually encode into that name itself? Renaming the devices on the network is not something that people are usually in a big hurry to do. They're going to be pretty skeptical. So making any change or asking someone to do this can be a tough sell, but we're going to offer them a real return on their investment of time if they do. So how? First, I worked with the team to come up with a standardized regex parsable naming convention that NOC leadership approved of and signed off on. I won't go into regex building here. We don't have nearly a long enough time for that. And it's absolutely can be a rabbit hole, but there are plenty of resources on the internet. We will include some of those for that sort of thing. Um, Also, in my experience, there's usually one person in your office that's almost a little too enthusiastic about using regex, and they would love a chance to flex their muscles on it. So honestly, if you just ask the question openly in a large enough room, someone will probably step up and be willing to help you. So let's take a quick look at a high level and understand how we can do this. And I'll sort of show you the names in a vacuum, and then we'll sort of talk through them and see how they can play to BigPanda's strengths. So this is an example of some of the device names that we came up with. Oh, and there's regex that I had mentioned previously. So now at first glance, this could be a little confusing, and there's an unlimited variety of ways that you can do this, right? This is just one sort of foundational example that could sort of help inspire you to come up with a solution that meets your own needs. Um, like I said, they look a little cryptic, but sort of once you get your head around it, you can actually see not only how you can decode this in your brain as a person, but also how they become perfect fodder for BigPanda. So let's break these down. All right. So this first one, this is a router. It tells us it's located in Los Angeles. It is servicing production. It is data center one, rack one, device A. So what we've basically done is we've broken down these host names into a number of sort of fields, right? That's basically what we're doing is we're using this as a uh, delimiter, almost, if you like, right? So we can see that the first part of this is going to be essentially the device type, right? We want to know what it's doing. The second part is going to be a code, like the airport code of the city it's located in. And the third part is saying what environment the device services. And we can even get more specific, right? So then these subsequent fields are showing us, where the device is actually physically located, right? It's in data center one, it's in rack one, and this is, device A, so it's presumably part of, say, a pair. And if we look at other examples right here, we've got, a switch. It's in Flagstaff. It is servicing DR. It's in the annex, rack 11, stack number 3. Similarly, web application firewall, right? Located in Detroit, servicing production traffic. It's in the legal office, right? So once you have that schema down, right, the rules that you're using to make something like this, then they actually become very easy to read. And what that schema is for you and your organization doesn't necessarily matter at the end of the day. It just needs to be consistent and it needs to fit your environment. Go here. All right. So what we have now of technical context that is helping both teams, right? Like even a bleary-eyed network on-call person, and I've been that person at 1 a.m. can read this, right? It meets our network team's need. But it also helps the operations staff understand because that standard schema can be referenced and understood more easily. And very importantly, it allows us to unlock the potential of the BigPanda platform and the hidden power of your alerts. Now, the network team, they know what their devices are and what they do, and some of their tools have a little more flexibility than others. But in our case, like I said, we had 4 tools alone, and that's part of why standardizing this information is so important. So for the uninitiated, alert enrichment is one of those core ways to get meaningful information out of alerts that might otherwise keep that valuable data locked inside. In our example, right, like each part is again delimited by a dash. And so in that regex statement, we can craft it to pull the data out of those different fields. And we can then basically use alert enrichment, specifically extraction tags. So instead of having this sort of sad little alert over here on the left that doesn't really have a lot of information to work with, we can build things more like this on the right, which help us end up with a much more palatable alert, right? You can see just based on that name, right? That, by the way, is still legal for DNS, so you get a lot of mileage out of this because it is still a legal FQDN. but we're able to extract the full host name because now we know it's a host name. There's no device name in one system, host name over here, DNS over here. This is the actual name. We're able to pull out that the type of the device is a router, the site, the environment, right? All those things that our brain was able to parse, we were also now able to build into BigPanda to really create a rich, meaningful set of tags that BigPanda can now use, right? They're high quality, they're context-rich alerts, and they're ripe for correlation. Correlation then is going to take us to take what might have been 5, 10, even 15 separate alerts for an issue and condense them down to a single incident. And it's full of high quality, meaningful information, giving teams exactly the info that they need to start triage all at their fingertips the second that ticket lands. And that brings me to one of my favorite Sherlock Holmes quotes, right? Data, 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 he cried impatiently. I cannot make bricks without clay. And what you're doing is you're giving Big Panda that vital data that it needs to start to use to apply, AI and our machine learning too. That alert that you saw on the left there was never really going to pull that back up, was never really going to do a whole lot, right, in terms of the platform. There's just not a lot of data for it to play with. However, what we see on the right there, there's a ton of data for us to work with. Okay. So it enables one of my favorite features of BigPanda, which is environments. Environments, if you're not super familiar, are effectively a set of, say, filters. Those filters allow you to sort, filter in or out incidents that match specific criteria. You can filter on almost anything, a specific location, application, a severity level, you name it. For example, say your CTO works out of that LA office. You could use that to prioritize any incidents affecting production traffic in LA, bringing them top of mind. This environment can tell you what it's going to do, and it makes things more visible, it can make things more simple, and it can also facilitate the use of auto shares. Now, an auto share is a really powerful feature then that allows you to take certain action on incidents that land in a given environment. Notification tools like, OpsGenie or PagerDuty, they're fine, on their own. But by using BigPanda to reduce the quantity and enhance the quality of the alerts before they were sent to the paging system was really critical for us. That meant that the alert noise was largely a thing of the past. On-call staff knew that whenever they got an alert, they needed to spring into action. So now we dealt with some of the most pressing needs of the network team, but what about our NOC, right? They may not be the one responding to all these incidents, but they need to know when there's issues, what's being done to remediate. And so part of what we did was to make sure that we were using these now highly correlated, enriched incidents to create tickets, in our case, into ServiceNow. So I'm going to go ahead and hand this back over to Adam, who's going to talk to you a bit about that.
Great. Thanks, Britton. Yeah, so as Britton mentioned, there's a lot of amazing work he did around enrichment and extraction and within BigPanda, but we also know incident management is also coordinated across L1, L2, L3 teams. And incident management is traditionally conducted in ITSM tools like ServiceNow. So on the next slide, Britton, please, you'll see an example that we don't want to contribute to fragmentation at BigPanda. We want to make sure that everybody has the information that they need where they're working. So information that Britton showed is all within BigPanda. That's also equally accessible within a ServiceNow ticket. So BigPanda can, of course, create a ticket, but also, interestingly enough, can also augment and ensure that all that critical insights that someone needs in the incident management team can understand what data is available, what kind of enrichment data, what kind of insights around the alert specifically that they have is available so that they can take action quickly without having to go to different systems or teams for information. So in this example, you'll see a BigPanda alert within a ServiceNow incident, which I'll show you in a second. So you can see all that kind of enrichment around impact, routing, host name, data center, all those things that have been extracted from different tools into a single alert. It's also been also correlated with the CI within the CMDB. So that way you have that kind of enrichment and also understanding of how that connects with the configuration item, as well as the priority that BigPanda was able to identify is also placed within that critical tag, so the team knows how to respond critically. And if we zoom out a little bit on the next slide, please, Britton, you'll see how that kind of relates in terms of an incident. So when a NOC team or a L2 team is trying to understand what to look at, BigPanda creates an incident service now. In the event or alert tables, will include all the different alerts. You can assign the different alerts to different teams so they all have shared visibility within an incident. So that way, they may or may not have an SLA, but at least they're aware of it. So you don't have to create 5 different tickets. You can have 1 ticket. And we're also automatically populating the different types of operational characteristics and that you would need within a ticket, such as priority, urgency, impact, channel. That's all being kind of dynamically generated without having to look within your discovery in order to populate these fields. But of course, everybody's talking about Gen AI and everybody's talking about the different ways of how to use that. And what's exciting is that the data that you're working and producing within BigPanda and the extraction tags and the kind of enrichment that Britton showed is also a great way to show the impact that you have with your Gen AI applications. So when you have all that rich context, technical context, you're able now to parse that in within an LLM. And also with other types of data that we're ingesting, such as operational history, SOPs, knowledge-based articles, just to name a few, we're able now to help that triage process to help teams automate that next step after they've been able to detect an alert. So what's happening? What's the impact? What's the likely root cause? What diagnostics should I run? What are the next steps that we need to do before it gets escalated to the L2? So there's a lot of amazing Gen AI work being done across the industry, and we've always taken the approach that we want to have that within BigPanda, within ServiceNow, within chat or Slack, within Teams or Slack, for example. So no matter who's working where, they all have that available information. And to round it out, if you're looking for more information on how customers use this, next slide, please. I encourage you to look at a webinar that Cardinal Health did with us a little while ago. And it's a whole webinar about how, when they changed the alert tagging to what Britton just mentioned and made sure that every alert just had the host name, how it drove remarkable results within Cardinal Health. And they have a whole webinar. They show dashboards and they show how their whole process, how they're able to reduce alerts and incidents, have dramatically faster resolution and decreased outage time. If you want to know the exact outage time, I'm going to leave a little cliffhanger because this is a movie. I need you to come back, like Ghostbusters 2. And you can go there and read about it and learn about it. It's really interesting. I think it'll provide great fodder for you as you think about your own kind of overview and architecture. And so, yeah, I want to thank you very much, Britton. Thank you very much as well for doing this and sharing your insights with the audience. If you have any questions or want to discuss this topic and further, please reach out to us. And yeah, Britton, any final words?
No, I just hope that this inspires you all to get out there and make these sort of changes and impacts on your organization.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, take care, everybody.